In programming, there are a few principles that I stick to, and the first is about quality. And if you think about cars, that's a really good analogy, because if you were to develop a car and put all of the emphasis on making it as quickly as possible, so it leaves the production line as soon as possible and as cheaply as possible, you don't want any costs in the production whatsoever that are not needed, and at the end you have a car. You don't discuss anything after what happens after it's left that production line. The entire focus is on just getting that production line running as fast as possible and as cheaply as possible. Then the types of cars you're going to end up with are going to be like the Trabant or a Lada and these types of cars. And obviously that kind of car is going to go wrong, and it's just going to be a disaster. And it's certainly not something that is reliable in any way, shape or form. Now, there is the other extreme, where you're going through every last detail in a car to make it just so perfect, you'll end up with a Maybach or a Ferrari. And you know, nobody needs to have a Bugatti. You know, it's just crazy. So you do need to have a balance. And for me, well, VW is a good balance. And so, you know, that's something that does go into computer programming, because when you're going to meetings about your system you're developing, people talk about milestones and deadlines, and they want you to finish this as fast as possible, and don't like spend too much time on this topic. And nobody really talks about the long-term things, like well, what checks are going to be there for maintaining code? How easy is that going to be? And code readability and these sorts of issues. And so to me, I do try and build in things which make it easy for my code to be maintained, but also make it so that my code is reliable to start with. And obviously nobody intentionally makes unreliable code, but if you entering data into a system, the more checks you do as that data comes in, the more reliable things are. And so by just adding more checks, reliability goes up, but also it makes it a bit more like time consuming. So you really do need to balance reliability of the future system with how quickly it is to develop the initial system. And also, I mean, it sounds so simple to have a naming convention, and everyone who studies computers studies naming conventions, and it's such a quick thing to study. And yet when you're looking at systems in Excel or Access and all these VBA code, it's very, very rare to see a naming convention. And if you have an accountant who's written an Excel spreadsheet and they'll say X is 17, and you think, great. And then the first year the accounting systems run, it works fine, the numbers are completely correct. The second year, you say to the accountant, what was 17, what was X? And he said, but the numbers were right in the first year. And yes, but what was X and what was 17? And you know, it's all about quality and making something that is easy to maintain. And it does take a bit longer to write out a variable name saying account balance for this, or you know, interest rate. And it's much quicker just to write a variable name X. But the following year, when all the data has to go through again, and you're just looking at it and thinking, what's X? You know, then it really does help to actually spend a bit longer making it work so that it can be maintained. And it's not that much longer, because when you think about it, as you develop a system, you don't make it work from day one. You develop a bit, you find a few little bugs, you fix them, and then as you're going through developing, you will have just a few bugs that you've got to get out of the way before you get to the end point of that development. Now, of course, if it's easy to maintain your code, then to fix those little bugs to get to that end of your development cycle is quicker. So, you know, sometimes it can be quicker to develop the initial system if you're thinking about the long term. And And so it all swings and roundabouts, but it is far better to have a compromise of a Volkswagen type of level of quality rather than Trabant. Nobody wants a Trabant level of quality, and if you're going for Bugatti, then that's a bit crazy. But it's all a balance, and you've got to balance these things out.